So hi everyone, here we have the next panel and moderator Krystian Strauss from OpenMediation. Please, Krystian, present your guests.
Okay, so hi, welcome everybody to Hyper Games Conference panel discussion. So today's topic is quite interesting, looking how quickly the hyper casual market is changing. So the topic is, what direction is the hybrid casual games market heading in? So I think everybody knows how hyper casuals are changing and evolving. And, some people says that, with the new hybrid casual, it's like a new era of hyper casual. So we're going to discuss more about it today. Okay, so gentlemen, how about we introduce ourselves first? Let's start with Anton.
Hey guys, glad to see you all on Hyper Games Conference. I'm Anton, CPO at 24Play. We are a development studio based in Ukraine. We have launched a couple of hits with numerous publishers, worked with pretty much everyone, and are still working with a lot of them. So I pretty much know everything every publisher thinks.
All right, great to know. Good to have you here. All right, next one, Onur from Kibibyte Games.
Hello everyone. I'm Onur Kalkan from Kibibyte Games. I'm a co-founder and game developer in the studio. As Kibibyte Games, we are in the hyper casual. We are making hyper casual games nearly for 3 years now. We work with different publishers, and even if we didn't work, but we know pretty much all publishers. We met them, we having contact. So it's like that.
All right, great. Yeah, it's a small world, huh? Everybody knows each other. All right, and Daniel from WAM, right? Or is it pronounced Wham?
Hi everyone, Wham. Yes, probably you will hear some noise on my end. I apologize for that, but this was the place I could find on the road. Wham is basically the world's first hyper casual gaming platform where people compete in tournaments in order to win crypto like NFTs and the Wham token. So we've been building on it for the past 3 years, and this year we kind of took off, but I'll gladly share more on our talk so I don't capture the mic. Great to be here, by the way. Nice to meet you all.
All right. Nice to meet you too. All right, and finally I'm going to introduce myself. So I'm Krystian Strauss, head of overseas business development at OpenMediation. So OpenMediation is an open source code mediation platform, but actually what I'm mostly involved in is a Exime Accelerator program where we help mobile game developers in every aspect regarding game development and publishing. So yeah, we have quite a lot of developers from hyper casual scene and casual scene. So therefore, plus we organizing different events like Indie Clash, which is like showcasing their games and winning some prizes. And also this year, we're working closely with IGDA to organize an Exime Academy, which is a custom designed mentorship program to even evolve more our kind of accelerator program, help developers to create successful games with the best in the industry. So I think everybody has some good background when it comes to hyper casual. So, okay, so let's start our discussion. So first thing, I prepared some questions and I'll be asking a specific speaker. But if anybody wants to add something by themselves, they're very welcome to. Right, so let's having a lively open discussion. All right, so let's start with first question. Let's start with the basic one. So what trends in hyper casual or hybrid casual can you see in this year? Anton?
The overall trend is long going. Games are becoming more complex, and they do become of better quality. So this basically means that it's harder for some people to do hyper casual, successful hyper casual specifically. And overall, the game structure is becoming a bit more complex. But from the game design point of view, it's not just one-click, super duper hyper casual. It's more of a unique gameplay style.
Okay, Onur, can you see the same thing as Anton?
What I saw is from beginning of this year, there was too much attention to idle games. We were also, it's like a new year and new games. It's like we started also with try to make idle games to see their potential. Because of beginning of the year, it was some hyper casual games were giving it some bad signals, like bad CPIs. So we tried these games, but also stacking games in a different way was very popular, was very trendy, I guess. But also they didn't get the success that much. But I guess what I can say for this year is mostly year of the idle hyper casual games.
Okay,
Yes,
interesting.
This is
Anton?
just a case of games becoming more complex by adding this idle element, and all this idle action is just coming from straightforward action. This is just cool blend, and this is how hyper casual evolved.
Yeah, so CPI became a main problem in the games. So maybe retention was the solution. So idle games is more focused on retention than CPI. So this is another way to get success in the wavy business.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, because we can see that it used to be like hyper casual was very short, very simple, and the life cycle of that games was very short. But then recently, like that life cycle of hyper casual games are very, very, long, right? And does it mean that like right now the retention is the main metrics that we are looking at? Daniel, maybe you can answer that.
Definitely, the retention is a challenge for hyper casual games. We see it a bit different because we approach it from a platform perspective. And in terms of complexity, we did it backwards. We published 3-4 year old games, but put them in a new context, which is tournaments. And users like that. So just by adding some meta type of activity on top of it, make these games evergreen, because they are focused on mechanics and score, not necessarily on a story. So if you put it in a different context, well, you have a different experience, and there you go. Retention grows and engagement grows.
All right. So does it mean that, the old classic hyper casual games will finish? It means that that's it? Everything will go to more hybrid?
Can you expand on that question, like specifically?
Means, Anton, want to add something? Oh, no.
I just wanted to say that hyper casual strictly cannot die. Evergreen genres are going to be with us forever. It's just when you're trying to come up with a new successful game, you take a look back at what was successful before, and sometimes you improvise on the same concept. So you just tweak it here and there, and boom, you have a new game. This is what happens usually. You add some new mechanics, you change the topic of the game, and it's a different game. So this is just what we see all the time in new hits. They are not always super unique. They can be just improved mechanically old games. So they won't die. They will improve. They will.
So it was like that, I guess. So every year, hyper casual or some trends dies, and other year reborn in a new form. It's going like that. I mean, because of also we were working with publishers, they were always coming to us with insights, with trend topics. So every time it's changing, it's evolving. So I mean, it's always something's going down, then something going up. It's like that. So this year it's this year's difference is there's a bigger evolution, I guess. It's happening. But I mean, people always need hyper casual genre because it's game design. I mean, everyone wants to be a game player. So we are focusing in hyper casual. We are aiming that people, all ages, all different gaming skills. So that's why hyper casual always be needed, but trends are changing. I mean, we should follow up what's next.
Yeah, that's true. That's very interesting. I mean, okay, Daniel, I think, mentioned that some of the hyper casual publishers are actually taking the old games and adding some new elements to it. Kind of, as you said, like the competition. What other elements can you add to your hyper casual game to be more hybrid casual and to be more intact with the trends of nowadays? Daniel?
Yeah. Well, I would say this is a trial and error and experiment type of phase because each developer, each studio, each company has its own vision regarding what the entertainment should look like. So it's both a trend and an invention because you need to give somebody a new experience. And you see the trend, and I would say adding social elements like playing with friends, being more understanding your audience. And I'm really for that. For instance, if your audience, I'm just gonna give a very creative example. If your audience, for instance, likes South Park, and there's a lot of cursing and showing fingers in South Park, and it's the same audience that plays on your games, maybe it would be a good idea just to interact with them in the same way. I don't know, give them power-ups that resemble that type of communication. And why? Because that makes it really, really fun, and you cannot get that anywhere else. So hyper casuals, we really believe, for instance, at Wham, that should be about first the experience, but also the connection you have with other people. And you have it through all sorts of meta elements. If I want to show, I want to flick you off during a game and we are 4 friends, I want to be able to do that because that is where my fun comes from.
Yeah, social element is something that's not actually very much explored in hyper casual yet. I mean, you don't usually see a lot of social elements in hyper casual. Well, that also becomes from the fact that most of hyper casual titles are being developed by small studios, and going for social mechanics is just way harder for them from the development side, basically. So this is probably why we don't have that. But all the time we find some new tweak to how make hyper casual work in new conditions of the market. And you said that, Krystian, you said that hyper casual is more about retention now than CPI, and this is completely true. But it's not like that, like strictly, because pretty much any success is both marketing and product. And without good marketing, you're not going to go anywhere. But likewise, without a good product, you're not going anywhere. So you actually have to get both intact to make a successful game.
You mentioned very good point, actually. Like we can see that before hyper casual publishers, when, for example, game developers are approaching hyper casual publishers, publishers are always asking and just checking for like these two metrics, CPI, right, or day one retention rate. It was very simple, but we can see, at least I can see, that more and more publishers are checking different metrics, and they're more complex testing than it used to be before. Is that true, Onur?
Yes, because
like what metrics our publishers are looking for right now?
Well, before it was like, you know, things like, so we are a small studio, lot of competition, lot of gaming, publishing, we have to be fast. And I guess in the publisher sites, they also have to be fast. So the first thing they are looking always is CPI and retention. Other than if you have some feelings about the game, maybe, but generally we don't work with feelings. So we don't look that much deep than CPI and retention. Now it's a little bit changing, but we didn't pass that phase yet. So I don't know. Still, that's what they are looking. I mean, CPI retention and playtime, and all with sum up as life value of the game, KPI. Yes. So that's what they are looking about social element of the games. I mean, yes, since we have to be fast, we can't add too much. We can't add in-app purchase, or we can't add Facebook connection, or play with friends, multiplayer features, something like that. But in 2020 with TikTok, everyone was sharing their kind of experience with hyper casual games. I saw a lot of hyper casual games that normal users playing and sharing on TikTok. Or I couldn't follow Twitter that much, but I suppose maybe on Twitter also it was trendy something, but especially on TikTok it was very popular. So I guess in a way, hyper casual, even you don't have multiplayer option something, with social media, with social platforms, you still have some people connection in the games.
Yeah, I think
there's one thing I want to add here, and that is the tendency of the industries to go towards procedural commercial approach, not something a feeling approach. And why I'm saying this, one, I think the most important metric would be the user sentiment, right? Is the user enjoying actually the experience? And this was something that we learned, for instance, at Wham after interacting with some amazing people at Miniclip, and they kept asking this: is the game fun? Is the platform fun? Because fun lowers that CPI much more than any hack or any type of I don't know, gimmick that you find, or a traffic source that you find in order to make it profitable. And I do understand that most studios want to focus on, as a business, on profitability, right? Getting something done, ship it, and then you get revenue out of ads. But having a product that is actually fun for the user that experiences it, and one tip from crypto, making a community around that, I agree it takes a bit longer, but it gives much more dividends and profits than churning this. Because there's a finite amount of users that you can go through. Once you're done with that, if you do not have enough retention or enough fun for your brand, you have to start over again. So it's the same wheel going over, but faster and faster. And at the point, somebody will get burned. Now, there's the other option where you think, okay, we have to look at profits, we have to look at costs, but how can we make it as much fun as possible for that user to enjoy it?
I mean, it's very simple. Just don't do games that are not enjoyable. If the game is not fun, it's not worth thing. It's like super simple. It has to be engaging in some way at least. And I just wanted to reference back to the question raised at what metrics do publishers usually look. They don't look too thoroughly right now. Don't know why, but usually it's just CPI plus day one on the first test. Usually we are pointing out at day 7, etc. in case that happens. Maybe it's just because publishers are really big and they have a lot of people, the strategies, the processes, and they're slow at changing that. So it's way easier to track from the developer's side because you are not so overloaded and you're not so big compared to a big company structure that has these KPIs set 5 years back on CPI plus day one. This is just something general. In the end, I honestly do prefer to just look on CPI and LTV and measures to improve them. So day one, for example, is just how we can make the game more profitable from the LTV side. You increase retention, you increase your LTV. In the end, CPI and LTV is what matters the most. Yeah.
Interesting insight. All right, so about like nowadays, what kind of gameplays are popular, or you think it's very popular when it comes to hyper casual, hybrid casual? Onur?
Game mechanics, right?
Yes, game mechanics, yeah, gameplays or different.
Oh, okay, yeah, I mean,
trending right now.
Stacking.
Besides idle arcade, I guess, because everybody will say that one.
Sorry, arcade.
Idle arcade, I mean, because this is quite obvious.
Yes, that is popular, I can say. Stacking games, like in the, there is a popular Steam game, Unpacking. Yes, Unpacking. So that kind of stacking was popular at the beginning of the year, but also stacking games with collecting items on the way to adding to your character was also trendy. And what can I say? It's also idle games are popular, but also I think Middle Eve thematic idle games was kind of popular, trendy. Yeah, that's what I can say.
That is completely true that the current trend, the biggest one, is idle arcades. I mean, just like a year ago, everyone is doing runners, everyone's doing idle arcades now because it seems that users enjoy playing them, it's fine, and you just want to replicate somebody else's success in a new way, and it's totally fine as well. If you have a good mechanic and you see that it's working good, tweak it, try it, why not? This is what we are doing here, we are prototyping. So yeah, but the idle arcade trend is now decreasing actually because everyone was doing a lot of idle arcades, just as with runners, right? Everyone's doing runners, and everyone stopped doing runners. Now everyone was doing idle arcades. Now we have a slight decrease in that because every genre can be oversaturated. As much as runners were oversaturated, just people didn't like seeing the stickman running forward because it didn't generate them like a completely new experience. Is what Daniel said. You should follow experiences and give players new experiences, not just replicate what was done before. It does work in some cases, especially when the trend is very early, when there are not so many games somebody could play. But right now, I believe that idle arcades are really oversaturated. I mean, And usually when I see a new idle arcades, they're just reskins of something that was already done. It just looks different, like changing a setting from a supermarket to a fashion house or whatever. It won't work as good as a completely new experience. So right now, everyone's back to finding these gems of what's going to be trendy, new, and usually we are looking not for just low CPI, but for low CPI plus something in depth for the user to explore and engage with.
I just want to add a small personal experience to Anton's speech. So recently, Spider-Man game came to PC, and I'm also a good fan of Spider-Man. So first I saw there's a character, if you know, Kingpin. So Kingpin mode, Spider-Man, they put the Kingpin as Spider-Man. So Kingpin is webbing, jumping like Spider-Man. So it was really fun to see. I saw it on Twitter. Then a couple of more maybe. Then I saw Kermit the Frog from the Muppets. It was really fun also. Then I saw recently Shrek. They made the Shrek as Spider-Man. And I mean, at that point, it was fun at the first, but it's still going and going. Where it will stop. So as a fan, I tried. Last mode was not that much fun for me at the end. I mean, if you keep doing the same things over and over, people on the internet will get bored and want to see something new, of course.
Yeah, I think this is one of the ways to longer your attention. I mean, catching all the teams, you have some gameplay, you have your game, you're adding some new characters that are right now topic. It's like on top, it's hot topic, or the new themes that are adding some, and it still kind of looks like it's working. For me, it's very surprising, like how runners are still working. Like maybe they're not as hot as it used to be, but they still continue to create them. And it's like, how many runners can we have? Like, is there any stop to this? You know, so it looks like the theme is very important. How to implement like these themes or these new trends or hot topics, and how to do it. Anton, could you give us your opinion?
So you can work on a hot trend. It's fine to work on a hot trend, but a hot trend won't work if you're just using the same mechanic. Like, I don't know, take Cube Surfer and replace Stickman to whatever character from the new movies coming out. It's not going to work well because each time you're making a game that's based on a hot trend, you have to actually think how you are going to implement what's popular in the show into the gameplay. And this way you just make it good in both ways. So you get the marketability because the show is trendy, if you're talking about the show, and you make the gameplay a bit different, the player experience unique, because you are actually using the mechanics from the show, and this is just another way to generate new gameplays for the user. So you just cannot take Spider-Man and insert him in the runner. It may work good on CPI, but at product metrics, if you have a very good competitor, it's not going to work. So you have to constantly think about, okay, I take Spider-Man, but he shoots webs, so I have to make a game where Spider-Man shoots webs, but why does he shoot webs and not using a gun, and etc. Once again, why this experience is going to be unique is very important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the theme is actually attracting. That's just the first initial step. But actually, to make it fun, you need to have a proper mechanics and depth in the game to actually keep the people playing. Otherwise, like the first data will be good, but then you're going to test again. I mean, the other data, longer, other things, and then this game is not going to actually work.
Yeah, and one more thing is that every hot trend ends. I mean, even if you're lucky to get your product in time for, I don't know, a new season of a new anime, okay. But in a month, this trend is going to, or maybe less than a month, this trend is going to decrease and people just won't be interested in your product anymore. Before the new season comes out, of course. But still, it's just, you can work like this, but it's just sort of risky.
Yeah, then you need to be really quick, I guess, right? I mean, your speed of implementing and everything to me faster than your competition, which is going to be very fierce. So how the speed of implementing and creating a hyper casual game is right now important? Daniel?
I'm the least suited one in this conversation to actually give advice on this, because we publish hyper casual games, and especially HTML5, and I'm a big fan of web games, and we can touch this point later on and why this is even faster to build than a native. But again, I'm not a fan of building fast games because you tend to run out of gas to build them. My previous expertise is building, I would say, hyper casual games, but for the women audience, girl games, and they are all theme based and they are all trend based. And I think we developed in the previous companies about 8,000 games in 15 years. And I know exactly what that speed means, and the monetization goes wild, and goes wild in the bad sense that you get ad blindness and you have to push the pedal to the metal even more, so you just break even. And at the point, you get to a place where you're just burned. And what we see now after 15 years of doing trend-based games, and now on Wham we switched to a platform, is that if we would have invested as much time in developing 8,000 games into, let's say, 100 games or 200 games, we would have done a bit better, because having focus in developing something that users come back to is more valuable on the long run. And when you have a team doing it, you don't switch teams, because at points people get bored or they get anxious about creating a new, let's say, a new element or a new game, and they quit. And games should be fun. So this is just my take on it.
Yeah, I can see that, like that, the quality is more important than quantity. And recently you can see that there is less new games. I mean, in a top 100, or like, with millions of downloads, hyper casual games, there's way less new titles than it used to be, let's say, last year, right? Comparing to it. So we can see that trend, right? Anton, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there is no such thing as speed in hyper casual. I mean, you have different games. Different games have different production cycles. Sometimes you have to spend longer. Sometimes you have to you can make it quicker. Okay. It's all up to your personal comfortable zone when you can develop high quality. And this is what matters more than speed. Of course, there are some cases when you have to get something done as soon as possible. In this case, I would recommend that you do that. But overall, if you're developing a new title, take your time. It's fine to take your time. But once again, maybe for me, a comfortable time to develop a prototype would be 5 days. For somebody else, they could take months. So it's really about your expertise. How fast can you make games? And it's really different from one developer to another. I can speak for us. So we have two pipelines. Usually, right now, most of the prototypes that we do take 5 days. But I wouldn't say that they are bad or something. They're not bad. I mean, they're good. It's just this is our comfortable pace at which we can provide high quality and ready to play prototype.
No, interesting. So you're putting in yourself in that, let's say, not niche, or how you, according to your ability, right? Instead of like just trying to follow up anybody else and, you know, just saying everybody else. Onur, is the speed is, oh, yeah, you say Anton first.
You should actually look at what your competitors do all the time, because you have to stay in this race, because when you are a developer, you're working as a publisher, everyone is in the race. But this race shouldn't over punish you for being fast, because it's just not worth it. Take your time, but take a look at what others do. So from my perspective, right, we've been doing games for quite some time, especially hyper casual, more than 2 years now. We know how fast we can go, but if you're just starting, you don't know how to do it, what is your pace? Well, try working in a 2-week pipeline for a prototype. Try that. Try faster. Just all the time, try to push yourself to a limit. And at first, your limit will be, well, it's probably going to be moral, right? You're looking at somebody else, he's doing games, 1 game per month. You're like, okay, I can do that. Then try making it 3 weeks instead of a month. Now you are already better than your competitor. So you just have to constantly take a look at what you're doing and trying to improve how you operate, and both in speed and quality.
Mm-hmm. Interesting approach. Yeah. Okay. So I think Daniel mentioned about adding some metaverse elements in your game. Like, should you include these? What kind of metaverse elements?
No.
Wasn't you?
No. I mean, meta experience is not necessarily referring to metaverse, but like just meta activities, not completely. They just surround the main subject, the main topic, which is the game itself. But we added, for instance, the tournament, which is on top of a game. So if a hyper casual game was just in single player mode and you would just compete with yourself, we added the tournaments. And then we added the platform where everybody can see how they were doing in different games, and the scores do not get all messed up when you install a new game. So this is what I'm referring to. Like, I don't know, the social layer would be another meta type of experience, not necessarily metaverse.
Okay, understand. Okay, regarding the different markets around the world, is there any market for hyper casual games besides United States? Onur?
Actually, I don't have too much information about that, because so our publishers mostly dealing with this kind of things. But of course, US is the biggest market. But as we saw it, if you are talking about big and valuable market like US, China, Japan, Germany, maybe UK, all Canada, maybe valuable markets. In India, a lot of population is there. So in Indonesia, a lot of population, people. Even if we didn't publish the game, we can solve the metrics. We are following the metrics that who is playing our games. For example, we stop testing the games, but they are still on the market. But organically, couple of our B2 games got organic attention, organic audience. So when we follow that, biggest numbers in a user base, coming India and Indonesia, but always US kind of countries are more valuable because of, actually there is no maybe difference, but because nobody is paying for these games, just they are watching advertisements. But still US users are more valuable, but there are South Asia or East Asia countries are also have a lot of population and a lot of gamers there.
Yeah, I was asking because I see that India and Indonesia, I think, have the highest growth of hyper casual. So I think around 30% or something. So that looks like that maybe we should pay attention to. Anton, you want to add something?
Yeah, so it's all about your eCPM. So I mean, not your eCPM, but geographical eCPM, of course, has in India cost way less than they do in the US. So, I mean, it's just not very relevant, but say in the US, a user can bring you 30 cents. In India, one user will bring you 1/10 part of a cent, but still you're going to have so many users with a little small ROAS, return on spend, but you're going to have much broader numbers of users, so it can generate some amounts, especially for smaller games. But it's just a small amount of money usually. But yeah, I mean, you target the US first, then you target tier 1 countries, Europe, Canada, etc. Then you go lower and lower until you find where your game is profitable. Your game can be profitable in various countries, but this is really a publisher question. Publishers usually only test US, but I've seen a curious case of a number of publishers also testing Brazil and Philippines because they believe that CPI strongly correlates with the US, and it's just cheaper to test in Brazil or Philippines. And
yes,
as they said to me, results correlate a lot. Well, it's not one-to-one, obviously, but you have to multiply. But this multiplier is stable, so you just spend less money on the test, and you sort of know the CPI in the US. But it's just, I don't know, it's if you don't have money to test in the US, why are you a publisher? So yeah. But of course, you can bring more users. You can test. These tier 3, tier 2 countries, marketability speaking, have you can generate a lot of users for cheap and see some product metrics. They are going to be like different, obviously, from what you're going to see in the US, but you'll be able to manage to understand if your game is fun at all or not. Maybe if a game is 0% day one in India, it's probably going to be 0% day one in the US anyway. So, but this is not something we do in hyper casual usually. Also pushers in the US. Occasionally they add Canada, but it's mostly on early soft launch phases for a hyper casual title. But it's different for other publishers, for different publishers. I mean.
Well, so Onur and Anton are mostly cooperating with publishers, right? When it comes to hybrid games, is it possible? Is it more possible to do self-publishing, or you still are kind of? It's still better to work with bigger publishers. Onur,
That's a cool one.
or maybe Anton, you say. Sorry.
Okay, so it really depends on your expertise. You can be a great game developer, but you're going to be a shitty marketer. It's totally fine. If you don't have expertise somewhere, you just have to get help from a big publisher. And big publisher knows more about games publishing than you do. You know how to develop games, but you do not know how to publish them. That's fine. If you don't know how to publish games, use publishers. Also, publishers provide some financial coverage, obviously. They can give you guidance even in game design. So it's a case for studios that don't know much about the markets they're in. And once you understand how your products work, how our marketing works, you can start self-publishing. I mean, the only thing that you need to have is a budget to do the marketing, because it's usually very high for hyper casual titles. For any title, actually, the marketing is pretty heavy. It's just not about first $50 for the first test. It's about how you make it turn over big monies and return you big monies in the end. And expertise. Usually game developers don't have expertise or money to pay for that expertise, so they go to publishers. But you certainly can do self-publishing. I've seen a number of great cases of studios actually starting self-publishing. I love that. We are not at this stage yet, maybe somehow later, but that's a very good example of growth. But it's just, you have to get expertise somewhere, and to get expertise you have to hire somebody who knows how to do that. But in this case, you just oblige him with your trust, and you have to pay him salary, etc. In case it's like a CMO, for example, and or you can actually learn how it's done by spending money on tests and etc. Just seeing how Facebook works. I mean, but you're going to spend some money on it anyway. So yeah, for most of studios, self-publishing isn't a good way. But if you have a number of prerequisites, such as marketing expertise and budget, you're free to go self-publishing. Why not? I mean, finding a budget for a marketing campaign isn't actually a big thing. It's how you actually operate with those funds that you have for marketing. Sadly, most of the developers don't know how it's done.
Yeah, it's easy to spend all that money and get stuck in that one place. So it's very valuable information. I mean, stick to your strength, right? Gain experience. Once you get some, let's say, budget, then you can actually think about that, right? Onur, how about you? Are you considering self-publishing, or you're going to stick with big publishers?
Yes, after 3 years experience, we finally wanted to self-publish a game. On the way, we tried actually, I mentioned earlier, there was some our games. We didn't test, we killed that games actually, but it got some organic audience, and it was very big actually organically. Also TikTok helped us. We didn't do anything, but game gets attention anyway. So we are thinking self-publishing, but not like just us. I mean, in every game genre, it's better to have a partner with you. In a budget-wise, you can, you are not working with a publisher, but you can have a 20% partner with a good budget. They can investors. Sorry, I couldn't say. Yes, you can find an investor to self-publish a game. Another way is you can maybe not in-source but outsource the strategy for your studio. Like, you can work with a advertisement company. Like, they can find you in the ads the right audience for your game. So when you finally have budget to advertise your game, you will make sure that it is the correct audience. So you don't want to waste your money, because you are not a publisher, so you don't have big resources, so you have to be careful. And in a general wise, self-publishing game is not easy as it looks. I mean, I put my game to the Google Play and I pay some advertisement money, then it will go. No, I mean, there's a lot of steps between that, so it's not really that much simple. We should first have some budget and do something experimentally to learn how it is going, or get some expert advice from a partner, or I don't know, you can find in the consulting from everywhere. You have to make sure that you know every steps to how to be successful. But also, I believe you don't have to find a big publisher to for your game, but you have to make sure that you are experienced enough.
Yeah, interesting.
It certainly takes a lot of time to learn any new skill, and you obviously have to also do games. So this is why marketing is just, it's hard for developers, because developers are busy developing, not marketing.
Yeah, game developing is just a small part of the whole game publishing thing. And as you see from Onur's, after 3 years now, he is starting to get ready to it, going with the flow, seeing what works. That's a good idea, but yeah, it takes some time. We actually have a question from the audience. Is it logical to try to find very low CPI for hyper casual? Because nowadays some publishers are still looking for a low CPI. On the other hand, some publishers don't care much about CPI. So I guess, yeah, Anton?
Nice question. I mean, why not? If you have time and resources to look for the lowest CPI, do it. Why not? But it's important to understand how publishers operate also, because there is actually a limited number of good developers on the market, and publishers have to come up with the ideas how to catch you. And if you do struggle with getting a low CPI, I can tell you that getting a low CPI it's not impossible. You can get a low CPI. We are testing a lot of games all the time, and we have a lot of low CPIs. But still, getting a low CPI isn't the end. Your CPI can get higher. Why not? Your product may be not so interesting. There are dozens of cases where you could have a low CPI and bad product metrics. That happens. Just not games are born hits. Even if they strike good CPI or they strike good retention, everything happens. But if you can look for low CPI, look for it. You can also look for very engaging games. Why not? So if you can do that. Why not? There is no bad thing about it. And when publishers are telling you that we don't look at CPI at all, blah, 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 well, actually they do. You won't be able to bring the game with $5 CPI to a publisher and he's like, okay, good. They're still going to look at various numbers. I mean, CPI, you're just not able to not look at CPI. Just make sure that it's not $10, okay?
It's not the most important thing, but it's still, yes, you say, Daniel?
There's one thing here with the CPI. I do not believe at all that should be the focus, but of course this is about budgets and how much of the budget can you spend in order to bring a user. The focus should be the profitability and the lifetime revenue. So if you have a CPI of 10 but you make $100 of that user, is that CPI low or high? The CPI game is usually when you basically arbitrage the cost you bought the user with the cost you sold the user through advertising. This is a zero-sum game. You search for the cheapest, and then you forget the thing that we were discussing at the beginning, making the game fun and having users that stick around. Having users that stick around increases the possibility of those users to purchase or to see ads. So this increases the lifetime revenue, increases the lifetime value of the game that you are publishing. And one thing, and you guys specifically pointed out, and I agree with it, is that if you're a developer that knows how to create amazing titles and games, you should focus on that and get a partner like a publisher. Now, there's a trick to this. In order not to get squeezed by publishers, because publishers tend to be autocratic machines focused on costs and profit, you need to develop IPs. You need to develop things that last through time. And when you do it, then you have a solid partnership with a publisher, because the publisher knows their end of the business, like publishing and getting traffic and users, but you have people who love the brand that you have created. So the focus here should be like finding the right publisher in order to publish your amazing brands, and then the CPI does not matter. This is just my take on it.
Yeah, so that is true, but we don't have too many IP cases in hyper casual, in fact. So this is a legit point.
So far.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I love IP. IP is super cool, but we just don't have too many case studies to see how it works in hyper casual. But still, this is a very legitimate point.
It's very expensive, I guess.
How to not get squeezed by a publisher. Don't work exclusively. Just work with a lot of publishers. If you're working with a lot of publishers, if one publisher is going to squeeze you, you just go to another publisher. That's easy peasy. Don't work exclusively.
Daniel, is once you're adding the social elements to the hyper casual games, is it that hiring the CPI? Is it like influencing the CPI somehow?
Well, think of it like this. Adding social elements can actually help you get the word of mouth up and running. So you can get a virality factor on the game that you make, and that brings you users. Now, if you're able to actually track this, you're on a path to seeing how your CPI is lowering, like specifically. Because if you bring a user that costs $1, but that user brings 2 extra users for free because it is fun and they want to play with friends, then you have a 30-cent CPI on that original one, right? I'm just making simple calculations right now. But I think Onur has some takes on this, so I will not monopolize the conversation.
No, I was just going to make a comment about previous question. About CPI and publishers. CPI is at the end always dropping after you publish the game, but at the first it's a very important thing. I mean, so you will get a lot of users with less money. So of course publishers are always looking for CPI, but now things are changed. It's hard to get good CPI, so publishers now focusing on different things also, but always also they will look for better CPI, and it is possible. I mean, it's always possible to get a good CPI, but it's harder now in these days, at least with these same old strategies. I mean, now people don't want to see that all same games for years. They want to see something different. And I guess even publishers or developers don't know yet what nowadays should put, but yeah.
Yep. I just want to make one point about the organic part of users bringing other users. This is a very important point that's very often overlooked by developers because they're just into CPI day one, targeted audiences, etc. But in fact, bringing these organic users are actually lowering your CPI in the end. You just take a look at how many targeted users you acquired, how much of them are organic, and you just can make an assumption that in the end it will be all covered by the LTVs from all your users, not just from those who were paid to play your game, basically. So yeah, this is a very important key factor to just making your game profitable. Yeah, if you can show your game to somebody else and you have something unique there is a chance that another person will try to play it as well. So you can measure your games by this factor as well. I mean, do you have a unique playthrough or don't you? Are users going to play the game the same way every time, or do they have some versatility to go there or there, to have different stories? And when players have different stories, they tend to share their unique successes with friends, family, etc.
Guys, I think the time is over for our panel discussion. So thank you all for participating and sharing all the valuable information. I think if anybody wants to contact us, they can contact us, right? Via Pine or LinkedIn, right? So that's good. So if you have any more questions or things, feel free to contact us. So thank you again all for participating. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
More to you.